guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I am finally going to be reviewing Final Girls by Riley Sager. If you're like, why? This came out like years ago. Yeah, it did. It came out, I believe, in 2017, I want to say. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure this was the first novel that Riley Sager ever released as Riley Sager, I think. His real name is Todd Ritter. It's a pseudonym that he uses for his horror novels, but I think this is his first novel. It might be The Last Time I Lied, but I'm pretty sure it is this one. I'm like 99% sure it is this one. And this is the book that kind of launched him to the fame that he is at now. However, it's also like the one book by him besides Lock Every Door that I haven't read. I started reading his work with The Last Time I Lied, and I've read every single thing that he's released since, but I never read this one, and I've heard so many people tell me that they read Final Girls and they didn't like it, and it like threw them off of reading Riley Sager forever. And I was kind of like, why? Because everything I'd read from Riley Sager, for the most part, I loved. So I really wanted to see what this is all about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about my thoughts on this book, and then I'm going to talk about some spoilers. I know a lot of people have been requesting that I put spoilers in some of my videos, so some of the books that I feel like I really need to talk about what happens in those books, I'm going to add spoilers at the end, but I will let everybody know. But let me read the premise of this book real quick. 10 years ago, college student Quincy Carpenter went on vacation with 5 friends and returned alone. In an instant, she became a member of a club no one wants to belong to, a group of similar survivors known in the press as the Final Girls. Lisa, who lost 9 sorority sisters to a college dropout's knife. Sam, who went up against the sack man during her shift at the Nightlight Inn. And now Quincy, who ran bleeding through the woods to escape him. Despite the media's attempts, they never meet. Now, Quincy is doing well, maybe even great, thanks to her Xanax prescription. She has a caring, almost fiancé, Jeff, and a therapeutic presence in Coop, the police officer who saved her all those years ago. Her memory won't even allow her to recall the events of that night. The past is in the past. That is until Lisa is found dead in her bathtub, wrist slit, and Sam appears on Quincy's doorstep, intent on making Quincy relive the past. And when new details about Lisa's death come to light, Quincy's life becomes a race against time as she tries to unravel Sam's truth from her lies and remember what really happened at Pine Cottage before what started 10 years ago is finished. Sorry, I'm going to work after this. I'm a bartender, so I'm like chugging Red Bull. Okay. Whew, I 100% get why people read Final Girls and were like, I am turned off of Riley Sager, because out of all of the Riley Sager novels I have read, this is without a doubt my least favorite. And I think one of the main reasons is the twisty-turniness of this story wasn't anywhere near the caliber of twisty-turniness that most of his other books are. I've only ever been able to predict the twist in one of his novels, and that was Survive the Night. Every other book I've been pretty much blindsided. I've maybe figured out a couple twists here and there, but never the whole thing. This one, I did not figure out the twist. I was completely wrong in who I thought it was, but when it got revealed, I was also kind of like, mine wasn't blown by it. Usually I feel like I've had the rug pulled out from under me when I read a Riley Sager novel. This one, debut novel, whatever. Another thing that I love that Riley Sager does, and I know so many people tend to not like this, I love when Riley Sager tries to convince the readers that something supernatural is happening and then it is fully explained away in something that is rooted in reality. There are no supernatural elements in this book at all. At all. It is just about slashers, and yes, that is a very different horror genre, sort of, than like a ghost story. But there wasn't that much of a slasher in here. It's based on slashers, and we kind of get like, as the book goes on, we get Quincy's flashbacks into the night of the slasher-ishness. But we have 2 other full slasher stories with Samantha's and Lisa's that we barely touch upon, and I feel like the Sack Man was an extremely interesting character that we should have really dove into. We also have a lot of lagging. The middle of this book really drags on until we start to get where we want to go. Now, that being said, I read this book very quickly. My copy is like 450 pages. I was reading like 100 pages a day. And I did really enjoy the ride of reading it because I wanted to like see what this book was all about. But I wasn't glued to the page the way that I normally am with a Riley Sager book. Middle of the Night, I did not want to put that book down, his latest release, because I was so compelled to figure out what was going on, and there were so many twists and turns and so many pieces to the puzzle that made everything fit. And this one, it was just kind of a twist. And it wasn't even a twist with like the Chestnut Man, where I felt like it should have been so obvious and I should have been able to figure out who the killer was, but I couldn't. And then when I realized it, everything fell into place and it made perfect sense. This one was kind of just like a twist for shock value. Another issue, I just didn't like any of our characters. I didn't like any of our characters. Quincy is a bad person. Quincy is a bad person. Yes, she has a lot of trauma. Yes, she has a lot of things going on. She is a bad person. And she's just allowed to be a bad person. And when the reveal happens, you kind of wonder if the bad stuff that she does in the beginning of the book kind of relate back to the bad stuff she does in her past. I'm going to get into that in the spoiler section, but she's a bad person. I also didn't love Jeff. I found Jeff very much there. He was just kind of there. And I just didn't love him as a character. He added nothing to the story for me. I wanted more out of Lisa. I felt like she was a really interesting character, and I feel like her backstory should have really been pulled forward and maybe taken up a large chunk of the middle of the book to give us a reason to really understand Final Girls in this world and to also, you know, care about what happened to her. And then I just found Sam to just be so unbelievably cliche. Like, she's like the rebel without a cause that's in every book ever. And so I just didn't love it. And again, when the reveal happened, I was just kind of like, okay. So I ended up giving this, I believe, did I give this a 4-star? I think I might have given it a 4-star because I enjoyed it. As like just a book on its own, but it's definitely leaning more towards a 3-star. Let me even see what I did. I rated this yesterday and I gave it a 4-star. In my, like, looking back, I feel like maybe it should be a 3-star, but like, I didn't hate it, and I've read many worse books in the 3-star realm. This probably is closer to a 3-star. I don't know. It was just okay. It was literally the weakest thing I've ever seen from Riley Sager. And The Last Time I Lied is one of those books where it's, again, kind of the, like, slasher murder mystery adjacent kind of story, right? Where, like, maybe it's supernatural, I don't know. But you get to that twist ending at the very last few pages, and it just makes you rethink the entirety of that novel. And it's great. I always say The Last Time I Lied is the best entry book for Riley Sager because it just really shows you what Riley Sager is about and what he excels at. And though it's not maybe his best book, I do think that The Only One Left and Middle of the Night are better. I think it's a great point of entry for him as a writer. This, not so much, because this is him, I think, just getting his footing, finding his bearings, and starting what is going to be a good writing career, a great writing career even. But it just didn't work for me. I'm going to dive into the spoilers now because I'm trying to talk about some of these points, and I feel like I need to bring in some spoilers to really make my points. But spoilers are going to start now, so if you want to stay, please stay. I imagine a lot of you have probably read this book or know about this book already because, again, this book is like 7 or 8 years old at this point. But couldn't care at all about the reveal of Coop. I did not care that he was the killer. And the only thing that it made me do is question whether Quincy's repressed memories are kind of what she was doing to get out of beating that man into a coma in the park. Because that was weird, the fact that she just immediately did this. And we already see that she kind of has like some like violent tendencies when she finds out that Craig was sleeping with Janelle, and she goes out there with the knife and like basically leaves the murder weapon for Coop to find. But like the fact that she's able to just allow Tina to take the blame for the assault in the park makes me wonder if when she was surviving at Pine Cottage, she just knew that if she let, I think his name was Joe, take the blame for what Coop was doing and show Coop that she was going to accept that narrative, that she could just wipe her hands of the whole situation and get out of the whole situation scot-free. And I wonder if that is actually what she was repressing in her memory, is that she is actually a very bad person. Because she is a very, very, very bad person. She is such a bad person. I could not get over the park scene and how that wasn't rectified. Like, there's a scene in Middle of the Night where one of the main characters, it is revealed, did something really, really bad and unforgivable. They don't get away with that scot-free. They have to atone for those sins. They pay for it, you know? And she does not. She just gets away with it. I really thought Jeff was going to be the killer. I was so convinced Jeff was the killer because, like, Lisa was found in Indiana at the same time that he was out in Chicago, and they made this whole point to show that like Chicago's not that far away. I thought that was going to be the big reveal, is that this like public defender who was defending all these horrible people, surprise, he's actually also one of them, right? I really thought that that's where they were going with this, and I was like, oh, what an interesting twist. That's why Jeff is here, because he's so boring otherwise. And he was the red herring. And then they tried to convince us that it was like Quincy, and to be perfectly honest, I'm still kind of convinced maybe it is. Because like, why did Coop not actually like deal lethal blows? All of the other ones had like serious injuries to them. But the cops will point out that Quincy didn't. So I thought that was really, really weird. The whole Tina Sam thing, where like you find out that Tina is somebody totally different than who she says, that was interesting to me. It was kind of like, okay, this is like a fun way to go, like impersonating somebody. But I just hated Tina. I just really hated her. I didn't quite understand a lot about her. I thought her connections to Joe and her motivations were kind of weak. And it just didn't make me feel anything for her and her plight. Like, the only character I really cared about was Joe. We only really get insight to Joe in the last, like, 20% of the book. And he's just weird. And he's a liar to begin with. So, like, there was just a lot of, like, gray that never really got unleashed and explained. And then we also have the whole addition of Jonah, the reporter. And there's that whole weird point where he's like, Quincy, don't you remember me? Like, we had class together in college. And she's like, no. And it was like, are they trying to prove that maybe he has a motive? Was there just all these little, like, red herrings kind of sprinkled everywhere? But to me, all it did was show that Quincy was a horrible person. And she had really awful friends and didn't care about anybody but herself and how any of her actions affected those people around her. And I just really hated the ending where they discover that there's a new final girl, and she like goes and she's like, I'm gonna teach you how to be a final girl. Why? Like, you were so against Lisa's help from the very, very beginning and only slowly grew to accept it. Why on earth would you show up in this hospital bed to this girl and be like, I am your savior? You're a terrible person. She's a terrible person. And I just didn't care. Like, I kind of wanted the reveal to be that she was actually the killer. I really, really wanted that, because then I would have been like, oh, they're showing us over and over and over how she is a terrible person and not just a victim. Like, it would make sense. Oh my god, she's the killer, right? But she was like almost just as bad as Coop, especially after the whole park incident, which the fact that there was like 3 separate scenes about doing weird assaults in Central Park, like, it was too much. It was too much, and I didn't need it. And it was so weird how this is supposed to be like the slasher, and the whole book, for the most part, like, takes place in her apartment. Also, how is she paying, like, the property taxes? Like, to own a building in New York, or to own your own building, to own your own unit in New York City, you still gotta pay, like, property taxes. Or if you're in a co-op, you gotta pay all these dues. Like, that's not just a mortgage. It's very expensive. And, like, her online baking thing, I don't think is paying for a massive 2-bedroom apartment. So I needed that explained to me as well. But that's just me from personal experience living here. And I just didn't like Jeff. I don't know. He was just there, and I wanted him to actually serve a purpose. And he was just irritating the whole time. Coop, I thought, was creepy, but it was also like, dude, like, this guy is totally into you, but it's also kind of weird that he's just showing up at your doorstep every freaking second. Like, she knew what she was doing. Quincy was not a good person. And I just didn't like her. And I feel like if I'm going to read about somebody that is a bad character, I need them to at least be interesting and compelling. And I just found Quincy to be self-righteous and mean and cruel. And I found Tina to be really, really irritating. And Jeff to just kind of be this, like, nuisance. This, like, nagging nuisance. And they build up this whole story about him being a public defender. And it just, this massive case that he's working on. And it just went nowhere. So I kind of feel like Riley Sager maybe had another idea for where this story was going, and then just, like, dropped some of those side stories to make Coop the bad guy. And it just, I don't know. I don't know. And sometimes they refer to Coop as Franklin, and I was like, no, you gotta give me, like, one name. There's so many characters, and they all have, like, different names. And sometimes she was Quincy, and sometimes she was Quinn, and I was just like, no. This needs to stop. Yeah, there were no likable characters. Like, even, like, Janelle and Craig and, what was it, like, Amy and Rodney and Bets, just none of them were good characters. Like, yeah, they're supposed to just be, like, the kind of background fodder of a slasher. but at least make some of them compelling. Like, I have to read about them for quite a while. And I also just didn't buy Tina and Joe's backstory. Like, were they in a relationship? Because Joe said he had a girlfriend, and it clearly wasn't Tina because of what they ended up doing with Quincy and the way Tina spoke about him. So I just needed more. Like, he clearly had more friends than just Tina, or he was a liar, and he was kind of lying to them from the beginning. So maybe he did have a hand in some of what was going on. I don't know. All very strange, all very weird. And the fact that he saw Quincy go out there with the knife and he was like, let's have a calm response to that. I was like, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. So there was still something going on with Joe, and I feel like I didn't get the resolution I wanted. So the more I look back on this, yeah, this probably should be a 3-star instead of a 4-star. This is definitely the weakest thing I've ever read. And if this is the only thing you've ever read from Riley Sager, this is not a good showcase of what he is capable of. Again, The Only One Left, The Last Time I Lied, Middle of the Night, Home Before Dark. They're all fantastic. I don't love The House Across the Lake, and I don't love Survive the Night, but I think they are both superior to this. So I will just leave it at that. Anyway, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoyed these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah.